What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. I am your host, Frankie D'Astoli. If you are watching on the video, you're noticing something different about me today. I got a fresh cut, right? After 6 long, grueling weeks of beard growing out, hair kind of falling over the ear a little bit. When you throw a hat on, it's looking a little wild, right? Got to throw a lot of hats on nowadays. Finally, after 6 weeks, got a fresh fade, and I got it from my boy Rocco Pavlich at Royal Barbershop on Haddon Ave in South Jersey, out in Collingswood, New Jersey, Westmont area. Phenomenal cuts, keeps it super clean. New space. He just moved in there. It's phenomenal. So shout out to my boy Rocco for making me feel refreshed and feeling like a new man, literally a new man. 20 days into the new year, I went from that. I actually took the new year, new me to a new saying after 20 days. But today's episode is going to be pretty light, guys. I'm going to pretty much just be breaking down where I personally stand as this year's progressed in regards to my rental portfolio, in regards to my dojo, in regards to Rosary and real estate, even just my life personally, where things are headed, how we're feeling. I'm going to be also reflecting back to my 30, 60, 90-day plan a little bit. And if you are interested about building out your own 30, 60, 90-day plan, the Frankie D'Astoli Show has an episode out there that dropped on January 1st. I believe it's titled Creating Meaningful Goals. And that is a episode where I break down how to really build out a 30, 60, 90. So we're going to look at mine a little bit today, see kind of where we stand, how things are progressing. I'll give you guys a heads up. I'm falling behind a little bit. So there's going to be some good things to kind of talk about in regards to that. And I'm just reflecting, I was planning on making this episode last week, but I ended up getting sick, as I had mentioned on the previous episodes. And up until last week, I was like, wow. We got these refinances done. I had a handful of other things kind of play out. I'm feeling pretty good. And then yesterday, I get about 3 different texts from 3 different tenants with 3 different problems. And I'm just like, yep. And we're back on the roller coaster of perpetual chaos. And that is the life of an entrepreneur. So if you're an entrepreneur in any degree, right? Not just real estate investing, really in anything, this is pretty much your life. It goes, you kind of have these swings of like, man, I feel like I'm on top of the world. Things are going great. And then next thing you know, you're like, yeah, this is an absolute mess and it's total chaos. And most of the time it feels that way. But you continue to push forward. And that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit, right? How could we learn from these mistakes? How could we take, these lessons that we learned and make, standard operating procedures around them, make SOPs out of them, do all of that stuff. So I'm excited about today. We're going to be breaking down a lot, but tomorrow, and I'm actually recording this on Sunday, January 19th. So when this actually launches on Monday, on the 20th, will be the first day of Exodus 90. And I've talked about Exodus 90 a handful of times. It is a 90-day spiritual retreat where you give up the common freedoms that we have on a day-to-day basis to find uncommon freedom with God, right? And what does that really mean? Well, Exodus 90 walks you through the book of Exodus, which is the story of Moses being sent by God to bring his people out of Egypt into the desert to wander for 40 years to eventually be led to the promised land. And what we realize is when we go through this book of Exodus, especially when you're doing it in the Exodus 90 journey, which is for Catholic men primarily, right? There are some Christian men in my group that have done it as well, but it is primarily for Catholic men. And as you go through the book of Exodus, what you realize is we are so attached to so many materialistic things, right? And I don't mean in the sense of like, oh, I love to go shop at Louis Vuitton, at the Short Hills Mall in North Jersey, or, I am driving a Benz, I'm attached to material things. It's not even that, right? Which it isn't always the sense. It doesn't mean just because you drive a Mercedes, you're attached to material things, right? Like I have aspirations to buy a fresh Mercedes one day as well. It doesn't mean I'm attached to it. But it's more of these other things, these little things, right? So with Exodus, what we actually do for 90 days is we just absolutely tone out TV. We don't go on TV, right? We don't watch TV. We don't drink alcohol. We don't drink sweet drinks, right? Which I made an Instagram story about this the other day. I was doing a workout in my morning routine in my backyard, and it was the last Celsius that I was drinking for 90 days because I can't have energy drinks after this, right? We take away music, any music that takes us away from God, right? So as much as I love Kid Laroi, I think Kid Laroi is a phenomenal artist, and he's probably one of the more cleaner artists, and that's actually saying a lot, even though he still has some not so clean words that he throws in there and some topics. Overall, he's still relatively clean. Like I used to listen to a lot of Pop Smoke. That's out the window, right? So any of that type of music is out. Any music that takes you away kind of from God that isn't lifting your soul up, that's also off the table. You have to do an hour of prayer every day, which is, in my opinion, a priority and should be a necessity for everybody, right? I talked about this on the last episode where we talked about God's love for us. I was saying how, me and my boy were at adoration hour and we prayed for 20 minutes, and that's 1.3% of your day. How many of us are even praying for 1% of our day, right? So an hour a day, that's awesome. And when I was doing this last year, it was phenomenal. Mass every Sunday, right? That's obvious, right? Go to mass every single Sunday, or if you go to the Saturday evening and receive the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And there's a bunch of other things in here, right? But the purpose of we let go of these things that we're really tied to, right? And I remember when I did it last year, that TV piece was so hard, right? Because I'm just someone who's got it on in the background, right? I like to have it on in the background. I like to, finish work, eat dinner, and then just sit on the couch and watch TV. That's something that was a big part of me. So when I took that away, what I realized is I had to supplement that with something. And when you're doing Exodus, what you actually end up supplementing that with is a lot of prayer, which is phenomenal, right? I also read a ton last year. I've read, I think, 21 books, which was the most that I've ever read. I have a new goal now for 30 books, 23 of them physical and 7 audiobooks. That's my goal this year. And Exodus 90 is something that's going to help me honestly achieve that, because I'm letting go of a lot of these things and I'm bringing myself closer to God. So today, being the day that this is going to drop, will be the first day of Exodus 90. That does not mean it's too late for anybody to join. If anybody listening also wants to find freedom through uncommon ways and let go of some of these things that we're just attached to and we don't even realize, reach out to me on Instagram. I could give you any info that you need on that. There's also an app that you could download called Exodus 90 where you could get more info about it as well. But it is phenomenal. It is an amazing journey. I'm doing it with a great group of guys at my church, and I also have some family members who are kind of doing a little bit of a subgroup together. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I will continue to keep you guys updated on how that progresses as it's 90 days that leads up into Easter. But getting into today's episode. So we're 20 days through January. Where do we stand on my own personal level, right? And this is good for everybody to be thinking on, right? Because I think we get into these thoughts of we build these goals out and then we never actually really check up on progress. And when we don't check up on progress and we get to the date that the goal should have been achieved and it wasn't achieved, it's very, very hard to go back through the archives and pretty much figure out why didn't we get there, right? Especially if you have a goal that's maybe 96 months, a year away even. We talk a lot about this when I talk about breaking down 30, 60, 90s. It's very, very hard if you're waiting till December 31st to determine if you hit a goal or not, and you're not checking in on that progress. I pretty much can guarantee you're not going to actually hit that goal. So we're here, we have, we're 20 days into January and we have a 90-day goal. We have a 6-month goal. We have a 1-year goal. But when we break those down to our 30, 60, 90, we actually really have 30-day goals every single way, right? So it's important to check in on that progress. So we're going to talk a lot about that, especially in regards to D&D Equities when it comes to my rental portfolio, my partner, Steve. That's really like my profession, I would say at this point, but even other stuff that I have going on too, right? So on a personal level, one thing that I've decided to do is to change my morning routine, right? So I had a gym membership and I was going to the gym relatively often. But when I was going to the gym, I just wasn't like driven, right? I wasn't really like hammered in and focused when I got to the gym. It was kind of just loose. I would kind of go in there and like just go to a few machines and see what was feeling. And I realized that like I'm not in the right mindset going in there, right? I'm going in too loose. I'm going in a little bit with too much other stuff on my mind. I'm going in too late, right? I was going to the gym at like 7 a.m. I needed to shift my gears. I needed to change things up. So I created a new morning routine for myself where I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I go outside, which I call the box, and I bought a SoloFlex, which is just a pull-up bar, a dips bar, and it's got a little like 2 handles on the bottom for push-ups. I have a few old haystacks, which is kind of random, but Bernadette's first birthday party theme was Little House on the Prairie. So we got like a bunch of haystacks and pumpkins and some other stuff. I have a couple haystacks left from that party back in November that I use for box jumps in the morning. And then I also do some leg lifts on the dips bar. And I wake up at 4:30 every morning. I go in my basement. I put my workout clothes on, and I have a picture of Jesus in the agony in the garden when he is being tempted before his passion. And I reflect on that because I'm faced with temptation. The temptation is to go back upstairs, to go to bed, right? But I'm faced with that temptation. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to unite my suffering with Jesus. And then I go outside. I say a workout prayer. I put on Gregorian chant, which for everybody that's listening, they're probably like, this guy's out of his mind. And then I do a workout. I do 5 sets of 10. I usually, my basic structure is pretty much 5 sets of 10 pull-ups, 5 sets of 10 dips, 5 sets of 10 push-ups, whether it's using the bars on the SoloFlex or doing some sort of decline push-up, 5 sets of 10 box jumps, 5 sets of 10 leg lifts, and then 40-second intervals of shadow boxing. And I do that for 5 rounds. Once I'm done, I say a St. Michael's prayer. I do a stretch. I wrap it up. I go back upstairs. I take a cold shower. I lay back in bed at 5:30 in the morning, and I do 1 hour of prayer where it's from 5:30 to about 5:50. I do about 20 minutes of silent prayer where I just try to initiate some conversation with God and listen to what he's saying to me. I then pray a rosary, which takes about another 20 minutes where I truly, truly reflect on the mysteries of the rosary. And then I do my Rosary in a Year podcast, which is about 10 minutes. And currently right now I'm doing a consecration of Mary, which takes about another 15 minutes as well. So within that, I do about an hour of prayer. Then my nephew comes over. We walk him to school at around 9 o'clock. I got a little bit of a slow morning to start. And then I get into business. And for pretty much from like 9 o'clock to like 3 o'clock, it's hardcore, just grinding, nose to the grindstone, working. And then after that, I do some family time. I do some other stuff, some passion projects, and that's pretty much it. And that's been my day and my routine ever since December 31st when I really started that. And even still, I always kind of had like a relatively decent prayer life from Exodus 90 last year. But it definitely has fallen off a little bit. And since I've initiated this at the end of last year at December 31st, when I first started this, I'm better. I just feel it already. I feel it. I'm better, right? To start my morning off with a hard outdoor cold workout, to then hit a cold shower, to then an hour of prayer where it's just me and God. That's it. It's alone time. It's much, much needed for everybody, right? We get so consumed with the world. And I talked about this in the last episode. We wake up, we're automatically in work mode. We're answering emails, or we're consumed with social media, or even our family who we love. We have family things going on, right? We're taken by, conversations with them and tasks by them and all this other stuff. And you don't have time to really just sit and to be at peace, to have that inner peace, to grow that inner peace. And being able to do that in the morning kicks my morning off so well. It hurt a little bit this week because I was sick. I missed a few days. I missed Monday through Thursday. I just couldn't get out there. But since I got back in on Friday and Saturday, I was able to hit it. Now it's back into the swing of things, which is great. And it really, really is just a top tier way to start the day. So if you're listening to this and you're looking to shift things up, I highly suggest it. Go outside, do a workout, get out of these gyms. Put yourself in discomforting, arenas and push yourself to certain limits, and then spend time with God, spend time with prayer. Your day is already off to a huge start. And there's so many entrepreneurs that talk about this, right? Like just collecting little wins in the morning. Jocko talks about this all the time. Jocko Willink, collect those wins. Start your days with those wins. And when I do that in my routine like that, it's starting those days with those wins. And it just makes handling problems throughout the day a lot easier to do as time goes on. That's how my morning routine's been going. And overall, that's been pretty good. When it comes to business, I'll start with Rosary and Real Estate. Rosary and Real Estate is a new kind of passion project that I'm really kicking off to try to get off the ground here, especially in 2025. And this all stemmed from, my saying, pray the rosary, buy real estate. And the purpose of that, as we've talked about a handful of times on the show, is to maintain spiritual poverty while achieving generational wealth, right? And I think all of us have, especially, from a standpoint of adults and, parents, we all have this responsibility to, bring our children, bring ourselves, bring our spouses to God and to unite them with Christ, where at the same time, we have this right, I will say, and this privilege to provide for those entrusted to us. And this is just what I think about on a daily basis, right? Like 3 thoughts that go through my head on a consistent basis is provide, protect, and lead. Like I say those things to myself often. This task that I'm doing right now, am I providing, protecting, or leading my family? And this is, I think, a great mindset for anybody to really take on. And when I look at, the pray the rosary, buy real estate, I pray the rosary to reflect on the mysteries of Jesus and Mary, because I know that reflecting on the mysteries of Jesus and Mary is going to help me grow closer to them. And I also realize that the third joyful mystery of the rosary is the nativity, the birth of Jesus Christ. And the fruit of that mystery is spiritual poverty. And what does that mean? That means that the King of Kings, the Savior of the world, was born into poverty. He didn't come in a glamorous castle on a white unicorn with a flaming sword, right? That's not how he came to the world. He came in a manger. He came in poverty. He came with pretty much nothing aside from being in the Holy Family. And Joseph and Mary, being the parents of the Holy Family, had everything, even though, in a sense, from what it looked like, they didn't really have much. But really, they were holding God in their hands. They were in union with Christ, with the Lord and Savior. They had everything that they could possibly need. That is the root of spiritual poverty, right? Understanding that we don't need the materialistic things to have everything, to have that relationship with God, which is a big reason why I love Exodus 90, because it really hones on that spiritual poverty piece. At the same time, as husbands, as fathers, as moms, as wives, whatever the case might be, we also have a obligation to provide for our loved ones. And that's why I buy real estate, right? For the generational wealth aspect. Of course, for the passive income, of course, to, have a great life and to be able to bring my wife on vacations and to send my kids to great schools and to do all those other things. But mainly to ensure the, financial stability of them as well, and to build into that generational wealth piece, but do not like fall away from the fact that the materialistic stuff in this world doesn't really matter. Right? It doesn't. Like, as many houses as I want, as many houses as I get, it doesn't really matter if I don't have God. And that's why I continue to say, pray the rosary, buy real estate, because the rosary will keep you in union with God, and real estate will help you, build out, a good financial future for your family as well, while not falling away and falling into vanity, which we talked about as well. So rosary and real estate is something that I'm really trying to get off the ground. And we are going to be doing our first in-person event in February. I still need to determine a date and a place. But this is something that I've been working on. I have some stuff going on with some merch. I've started developing the website. And I plan on doing an in-person event. So if anybody is in kind of like the New Jersey, PA, Delaware area around there, right, whatever called Delaware Valley kind of vibes, I will be doing an in-person event for Rosary and Real Estate that will be coming up in the beginning of February. And it'll be an event for anybody that wants to learn how to pray the rosary, what the rosary is, and for anybody that wants to learn how to invest in real estate and how to build generational wealth, right? And if you are already a real estate investor, or you are already a Catholic who's praying the rosary, come to that event, because there's going to be so much so much value from it. And I plan on really building a community around this. So that is a big focal point for 2025. Some things have kind of kicked off, but it really will start kicking off once I truly solidify that website and actually get an event going, which I do plan on doing in the beginning of February. The next is D'Astoli's Dojo. So this is, again, a big passion of mine. I love, coaching, training, mentoring. I have some phenomenal mentors. I love being a mentor to others as well. And D'Astoli's Dojo has been awesome. I launched it in August of 2024. The students that I have are phenomenal. I love seeing my students do deals and a bunch of that stuff. 2025 has been a really great kick. I've gotten 2 new people that have signed up for the mentorship, which is awesome. And I believe I've had 3 people that have signed up for the real estate wholesaling course. And the wholesaling course is 12 and a half hours of online training, all around wholesaling real estate. I walk all my students how to wholesale from start to finish, how to get the deal, I should say even more than before that, how to acquire leads, how to convert those leads into prospects, which eventually converts into customers, how to get those properties under contract after you analyze them, and then how to disposition them to investors and actually bring it to the closing table and make money. And that's over 12 and a half hours of online training. And then we have weekly group coaching calls, which is where students bring their questions in and we do actionable items such as outreach to investors or sellers, such as outreach on, Facebook or really building out your systems and processes. All of that stuff kind of comes in those weekly group coaching calls. So I've had a few people that signed up for that in the beginning of this year. This has been great. And then I had 2 other people that signed up for the mentorship as well, which has been awesome. And I love working for the mentorship. The mentorship programs are pretty much anything that any student really needs. So I have a few people in there that are looking to really amplify their wholesale stuff, but then other ones are trying to get your first house hack, or growing a real estate portfolio. I have someone in there that's got a couple multifamilies. We're talking about leveraging those multifamilies to buy more multifamilies, so eventually he could replace his W-2 income. All along those lines, those things like that. So D'Astoli's Dojo has been a real great passion project of mine that's been awesome. Again, I'm a 3rd degree black belt in karate, a white belt in jiu-jitsu. So the fact that I get to combine my martial arts training with real estate, 2 of my favorite things, is just awesome, and I love doing it. But really, the bulk of everything that has been going on is in D&D Equities, right? And D&D Equities is my real estate business with my partner, Steven Danilo, where we really focus on buying rental properties, right? Doing the BRRRR strategy. And the BRRRR strategy is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. The BRRRR strategy is one of the most tried and true proven ways to actually scale a portfolio, right? So if you are someone who's like, man, I want to be a real estate investor, like I want to replace my W-2 income, I think I'm going to go buy a house hack. First and foremost, that is a phenomenal idea. That's exactly how I got my start. But I don't want you to think that just buying one house hack is going to, within a year, like make you financially free, right? And that's the same even if it wasn't a house hack, right? I'm just using a house hack example. If you wanted to go buy, your first flip this year, right? Or your first rental property, it's very, very hard to become financially free off of one property. That's why, Rosary in real estate, it's not about replacing your W-2 income. Rosary in real estate is about obviously the rosary aspect, staying in communion with God, which we talked about, but it's buying real estate for the generational wealth part of it, right? And if you are someone who has a job and you're like, I want to buy one property a year because after, maybe like 10 years, I will have enough income to, actually step away from my job. But because in 10 years, I'm going to have a portfolio of properties that I'll be able to really, build wealth off of. That's a great idea and a great foundation. So when the BRRRR strategy comes into place, the BRRRR strategy is mainly a lot of times for people that are really looking to scale a portfolio. And that's where my partner and I are, right? So just to give you guys kind of our long-term vision, and this is all on my 30, 60, 90-day plan, by May 1st of 2026, my partner and I are expecting to have 50 rental doors, right? So not properties, not a house, right? Because a single family house is one door. A duplex is 2 doors. A triplex is 3 doors. A quadplex is 4. So we want to have 50 doors. So that might actually really only be like 38 houses, but some of those houses have different, door counts. But we want to have 50 rental doors at 100% occupancy, which means we're probably going to need to have more than 50 doors at that point. We're probably actually going to need to have about like 60 to 65 doors to actually be at that 100% occupancy point, which means every single one of those 50 doors is actually rented out. Now, when each of those 50 doors are rented out, our projections are we're going to have every single door generate $400 in net cash flow. So there's a little bit of math here, right? Let's say you have a rental property that rents for $1,500 a month, and you have a PITI, which stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That is your total payment on a month of, let's say, $1,000, right? That's your mortgage payment with interest, with the taxes, your property taxes every year, and your insurance every year. And let's say that comes out to $1,000. Your gross cash flow is $500. It's just the difference between what the rental income is and that PITI. Your net cash flow is when you put money aside for reserves, right? So out of that $500, let's say we put aside $100 a month for reserves. Reserves could be little things, right? You have a tenant that calls, they say they have, some sort of leak. You have to send somebody out there. It costs you $250 to fix it, right? Or it could be bigger things, right? You have a tenant that says they're getting a leak from the roof. Boom, now you need a new roof, right? Which that's some stuff that if you're doing the BRRRR method, you should really analyze before you actually finish your renovation. But long story short, you now have a net cash flow of $400. That 500 gross minus that 100 in reserves gives you a net cash flow of 400. That is exactly what my partner and I predict for all 50 of these properties. We want to have a net cash flow of $400. So our gross should be a minimum of 500 and our net should be a minimum of 400. This will result, after we have those 50 doors at $400 in net cash flow, this will result in $20,000 in passive income per month that'll be split between my partner and I. So essentially what we're saying is if we totally quit everything else we were doing, right? I quit D'Astoli's Dojo. We quit buying houses to either BRRRR out of, to flip, or to wholesale. We, at this point, on May 1st of 2026, will have $20,000 in passive income coming to us every single month where you could have 10 grand, I could have 10 grand, and then that's it. We're good, right? We don't need anything else after that because that's where we're set. And that's just what our number was that we kind of, came up with, that we both felt like 10 grand each. Cool. We could do what we want to do off that point. So as we accumulate these doors, however, there is another factor that we look for. So when you BRRRR properties, if you do it right, you could buy a house for a discounted price, renovate it, rent it out, and then refinance on it. And again, refinancing, I've explained this in prior episodes, but refinancing is replacing your old loan with a new loan, right? So if I have a loan of $100,000, I am refinancing on that loan. I'm getting a new loan to replace that old loan, to pay off that $100,000. And now I'm going to have a new positional debt on my property. So if you do it right, if you do the BRRRR strategy right, let's just say your loan amount was $100,000. Let's say you had brought $20,000 to the table. When you refinance on that property, you should be able to recoup that $20,000 that you put in as a down payment on that property. If you do it wrong, not necessarily wrong, because there's not a lot of ways that you could actually invest in real estate wrongly, because a lot of times you'll get some benefit from it. But let's just say you might have put $20,000 down. When you go for that refinance, you might only get $10,000 back to you. So you actually end up leaving $10,000 in the deal. Is that the worst thing? No, it's not. It just means you don't have what's called an infinite return, right? So if I have $10,000 in the deal and I make $100 a month off that property, right? That's my return that I get every month on the $10,000 that I have in there. But if I have no money in there and I make $100 a month on that property, now I have an infinite return because I'm not even making any money on my money. All my money is already out and in another investment. So if you leave $10,000 in that deal, it doesn't mean that you did that deal wrong. It just means now your return isn't as juicy as maybe you had initially projected it, or it could be exactly how you projected it, depending on how you ran your numbers. If you do it really, really well, you could buy a house. You could put $20,000 down if you put anything down on it. You could refinance that. You could get that $20,000 back, and then you could get more money on top of it. And a lot of times in order to do this, you need to have one of two things. You either need to be able to aggressively source property and get property for a really, really good price, right? That's number one. You need to do that regardless anywhere. But number two is a lot of times it depends on your market, right? What kind of market are you investing in? Is the volume there in order to really do it in the way that you want to do it, right? Because I know a lot of people that say like, I want to buy real estate. I want to buy where I live. Awesome. Where do you live? They're like, oh, I live in like Austin, Texas. Like that's a really, really hard place to burr in general. To also scale a portfolio is actually really, really challenging in a place like Austin, Texas, just because of how popular the area is. So sometimes when you find some of these not so popular but good rental market areas, you could burr a lot faster. For instance, like Cleveland, Ohio is one of the most popular ones right now. There's a great Section 8 tenant pool over there. You have cheap properties that you could still buy properties for 100K or less, and you could buy at a high volume and get to a point where you could scale real estate, right? So that's one way to look at it. And if you do it really, really good, you could get your 20K back and then some, right? So my partner, Steven, and I, that's how we project to do everything. And we do that by two ways. A, we're in a good market that we're able to do it. But B, we source properties at such an aggressive discount. And we get these properties at such a discount. And we have our contracting crews that go in there and do the work. And they're consistent with their pay. And we have everything set up in that structure where we're able to very much predict what we're going to be able to make on it. So the second aspect to the 30, 60, 90 to the long-term goal is the money that we'll make on the refinances, right? On the burst. We want to get to that $20,000 in passive income for sure, but we also want to make money on every single BRRRR deal. And by May of 2021, our plan is to have made $500,000 in tax-free money on these BRRRR deals. Now, there's another asset to that, right? Tax-free money. When you do a flip and you sell that house, you have to pay what's called capital gains. And I've talked about this on prior episodes. You have to pay capital gains because it's a tax on a gain, right? If I paid $100,000 for the house and I sell it for $200,000, with all things equal, I made $100,000. I need to pay taxes on that. It's a gain. But when you refinance a deal through a BRRRR property and you pull that equity out, you don't get taxed on equity. Because equity isn't a gain. It's just what's built into the house, right? It's money that's yours that's built into the house, so you don't get taxed on it. Now, a lot of times when you refinance a house, you can't pull 100% of the equity. And that's the difference between doing a BRRRR versus like doing a flip. With the flip, you're going to be able to pull 100% of that equity out. You're going to get that all in the matter of profits. Whereas when you BRRRR it, you won't get it in profits, so you won't get taxed on it, but you won't be able to pull all of it out. But you have a rental property that's producing cash flow for you. Again, I know we're getting a little bit in the weeds there, but that's the other aspect of it, is getting that up to that $500,000 in tax-free money by May 1st of 2026. So that's kind of our goals. That's how our vision has played out. And when I created my 30, 60, 90, I really had 5 key focal points in place. My key focal points was number 1, systems and processes. What my partner and I are learning is as we're scaling very, very quickly, it's very easy to get out of control. And this is what I was saying before. You live in almost a perpetual state of chaos. And the reason that is because you don't have good systems and processes, right? You don't have any standard operating procedures, SOPs. So this has been a big focus point of mine, is really creating SOPs for me and my team to really, really execute at a high level and to not have any kind of like cracks in the floor, right? If something goes wrong, why did it go wrong? Let's create an SOP around it so that way it doesn't go wrong again in the future. That was one focal point. Developing a true, like legitimate acquisition engine, right? If we want to get to that 50 door count at 100% occupancy, we need to turn up the speed, and we need to do that by having a legitimate acquisition engine that's turning and burning leads and generating more, properties into our portfolio. 3 is company culture. We brought on 2 new people in the back half of 2024. We also started the company in April of 2024, but we brought people on in the last kind of couple months. And we really want to focus on building a good company culture, right? That has good core values such as purpose, faith, customer oriented, things along those lines. brand presence as well within the city that we're buying in. We want to really build out our brand presence. This is why I meet with a councilman every single month. This is why I talk with locals and other business owners in the area. And also bookkeeping, right? What we realize is my partner and I were both not the most organized people, and we definitely don't have accounting backgrounds, right? I took some accounting classes in high school, but I barely studied or, focused enough to really like draw anything from it. Even though I graduated with a finance degree, it took me 6 hours to do my taxes on TurboTax a couple years ago. So I'm definitely not a bookkeeper or accountant. So bringing in bookkeeping was another big point. But that's really kind of like the big focal points of the 30, 60, 90, right? And as I look at where we are now, 20 days into January, the goal for January 31st is this: to have a door count of 19, to have an occupancy rate of 65%, to have monthly net cash flow of $4,800 net cash flow, and then to have $111,000 generated through refinances. And where we currently sit now is we're at a door count of 16, but yet we are actually still we're set to close on 3 more doors this month. So that'll get us up to that 19. We're set to close on a duplex on Tuesday, which I'm getting suckered into buying a lot, which I'll have to talk about as well. And then a single family on January 31st, which we're going to try to move up a couple of days just to ensure that it closes before the end of the month. So that should get us to that 19 door count. We're falling a little bit behind on that occupancy rate, though, and it's actually going to dip a little bit more when we add those numbers. But right now, we're currently at a 54% occupancy rate. And if we didn't have these other two coming in, we would maybe touch into that lower 60%. But with these other two, it's going to end us dropping us probably to about like 49%. I have to do the numbers on that. We're getting about $3,600 in net cash flow at the moment, which is about $1,200 short of where we want to be. And we've also generated $81,000 in money through refinances. So we're about $30,000 short on that $111,000 goal by January 31st. So we got some work to do for sure. And I think the biggest focus points is the cash flow piece is a big one. We have a few units that have some under rented tenants that we've inherited. So we need to work on, doing some tenant turnover there. And we do have a couple tenants that are moving out at the end of January. So we will be able to get those houses, renovated, refinanced, and then put into getting higher cash flow numbers off of that. And then we also had 2 appraisals that happened, but we ended up having to switch lenders. So sometimes with some lenders, and like I say this with contractors too, I'm like, finding a good contractor is like finding a wife. Like you got to go on a lot of dates. And that's a lot of times with lenders too. And I have a couple really, really good lenders, especially on the purchase side. I got some of my who I really consider now at this point, like some of my best friends that are lenders that, constantly deliver. And on the back end, on the refinance side, sometimes it's like kind of going on some dates and doing some speed dating with some lenders, just trying to find the best rates, trying to find the best terms, trying to find like who could close the fastest, a lot of those types of questions. And I've had to switch off a couple of lenders. I do have one of my boys with Burr Funding. He is absolutely phenomenal. And we have been running mainly all of our deals through him, and we'll continue to run those through. And he's top tier. So hopefully we stop the speed dating a little bit, and we kind of just am married to one more on the back end lender a little bit more. But that's been a little bit of a reason. So we've had some of these refinances get a little bit delayed, and we have 2 right now that are we're sitting on $62,500 between these 2 refinances. And unfortunately, it looks like they're just going to end up tailing into February, but we should also have another 1 or 2 to refinance in February. So we could have kind of a 4 property refinance in February, which very well could look to be up to $100,000 in just February revenue on the Burr side. So that could be really, really cool if that plays out. But overall, that's kind of like a recap of where we stand in regards to like our 30, 60, 90 day like actual goals, or our 30-day kind of checkpoint goals. But we've had just a lot of other things going on just within D&D. I mean, there's just every single day, it just feels like there's some sort of new tenant thing that pops up, right? Like yesterday, I got 3 texts from tenants on different things, right? One was the electric wasn't working on a few of the lights, and we just had the whole house rewired. So I don't really understand why some of these things happen, but they do. The other one was the heat wasn't working. So, oh no, I'm sorry. That was actually a couple days ago. The other one was there was a smell of gas. Our contractor was at one of the houses yesterday and he smelled gas. So we needed to call the gas company over there to shut the gas off to make sure that nothing blows up. So that was fun. That was at like 7 a.m. yesterday. And then another one, which it seems really like these sewer pipes are my kryptonite. I had one tenant call and say that she's getting like sewage in her basement. It was an absolute disaster. Thankfully, our plumber was able to get there quickly and was able to get a trap. There was an issue with the trap, and he was able to get that cleared out, and thankfully everything worked out. But sewer problems, if you guys have been following, have been literally my kryptonite, and I am in a huge, I don't want to call it like a legal lawsuit at the moment, but I am going back and forth with a collections attorney from this very well-known plumbing company, which I won't say, who absolutely couldn't have ripped us off anymore and said that we were covered by insurance. Long and behold, we weren't covered by insurance, and now they're trying to stick us with an $18,000 bill. I've had to get my attorney involved. It's been an absolute disaster. But that's been a whole nother thing, right? So just as days go on, like I keep saying, guys, this is the more that you grow, the more problems are going to pop up. And I think for me, a big focus point in these first 90 days is getting a well-oiled machine on how to deal with those problems. That's really the biggest focus. And a lot of these problems aren't really new problems. They just kind of come in different forms. So a big focus is really just finding a way to handle those problems in the most efficient and diligent way possible, right? So I think ultimately, if I'm speaking pretty like candidly, these next 90 days is about stabilization. That's what it comes down to. Stabilizing the assets that we currently have, and then stabilizing good project management on the new assets that we acquire, and stabilizing how we handle and manage problems that come our way so that it's the most efficient way possible. That is by far the next, overall general consensus of what the goal is for the next 90 days. And of course, to continue to grow that door count, continue to improve cash flow, and continue to, increase the money that we get on the refinances. But that is a check-in for where we currently stand at the, at the mark of January 20th, 20 days into the first 30-day aspect of the 30, 60, 90-day plan. And there's been a ton of positives. There's been definitely things that we could work on, but it's been all fun end games for the most part. And it's very, very exciting to see how things continue to play out. So I'm super excited about that. Like I mentioned, Rosary and Real Estate, we're going to be dropping a in-person event to start February. Definitely, reach out about that if you're in the kind of New Jersey, PA, Delaware area, or even if you're in New York and you want to come down, by all means, anywhere that you really are, if you want to make it for that, that'd be awesome. Exodus 90 is now officially live. If you are interested in signing up for that, it's not too late. Feel free to reach out to me. And if you guys have any questions at all, Frankie D'Astoli _REI is my Instagram. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you guys about anything you guys have, real estate, Catholicism, leadership, entrepreneurship, whatever it could be. I'm here for you guys. As always, pray the rosary, buy real estate, and I will catch you guys soon. Oh, one last announcement. The Frankie D'Astoli Show is going to be bringing on guests. This is a new thing that we are going to be doing now. I do have a few interviews already set up with some really great real estate investor friends of mine, an attorney that I have that's going to be coming on to be talking about asset protection. I'm trying to get my priest to come on to talk about some stuff as well. So I'm very, very excited for some people that we're going to be bringing on. If you guys have anybody that you think would be a great addition on the Frankie D'Astoli Show, please feel free to send them my way. If you think you'd be a great addition on the Frankie D'Astoli Show, please feel free to reach out to me. It won't be a super, super common thing of having interviews on, just because I already have a ton of content that I do have planned to get out to you guys. But I will be definitely doing some interviews and bringing some people on to add some additional insight to all the listeners on the Frankie D'Astoli Show. So very excited for that. I appreciate you guys. Pray the rosary, buy real estate. I will talk to you soon. Peace out.